Gentlemen and ladies, it is time for some new Big Tuna content, and today I have a special video for you guys. I asked you folks on how you would feel about a enhancement shaman guide from yours truly, and to be honest, to my surprise, a lot of people were actually in agreement. A lot of people were actually stoked to see a guide and were constantly asking, hey, when is this guide going to be out? So today I have a enhancement shaman PvP guide from Big Tuna coming at you literally right now. We'll cover everything from races to stats to the different builds you can use. All of that is going to be wrapped up in this video, and of course other topics that I'll mention, well, later on in the video. There aren't a lot of shaman creators out there, so I gotta step my game up. But if you want to see more enhancement shaman PvP content, you can check out Sector. He's another enhancement shaman. I don't know him, but of course I do like watching his content. He has some helpful tips on just how to enhance if you're really looking for a bit more information, if I'm not cutting it for you, unfortunately. Another one is my friend of Layden. He's a rep paladin main, but if you ask him nicely, he'll put out some enhancement shaman content for you to enjoy. And remember this, before I start this guide video, use this as a template. Take what I say and take these builds and really mold it into your own idealistic form. When you can take what people give you and really fine tune everything down to the very core and really make it suit your personal needs, that's gonna truly maximize your playability with this game, and not only that, but in life. Whew, man, I'm a philosopher now. This intro is getting too damn long. Let's get right into the guide video. So to kickstart this guide off, I want to talk about races. They're obviously not super important, wow, but you know what? If you're making a guide video talking about a certain class, you kind of have to mention anything that really makes a class compatible, and of course races fall into that section. So your alliance, you want to pick a certain race, but you want to maximize your character. Your horde, what race do I pick for enhancement shaman? Well, you have some options here. For alliance, there's only really two options. There's Dark Iron Dwarf and, surprisingly enough, Colturian. Mimi, overlooked, but you have to think for a second. So Dark Iron is pretty standard. If you guys know how Fire Blood works, again, it cleanses off diseases, poisons, magical effects. It puts your trinket on a CD, because if you're feared, you can use Fire Blood to get out of that fear. It's a really great ability, and each debuff that you cleanse off of yourself, you'll get primary stat. So what does that mean? More damage. Pretty good. Now, why am I saying Colturian? Colturian, a lot of the allied races are just kind of meant for memes and kind of looks and everything, but why am I saying this could be an actual good race to pick? Well, Haymaker is honestly an ability that is completely overlooked, and a lot of people don't really think about it. I used to be Colturian beginning of Shadowlands, and Haymaker has saved my ass a bunch of times. Whether it was to relieve pressure off of me, off of my healer, in RBGs, just knocking somebody to their death, it was just honestly amazing, especially in maps like Mugambala and Blade's Edge. You know, talking about arena here, knocking just melee off or knocking just healers out of range, and you know, getting an Earthbind totem on them and just really keeping that distance away from their DPS has honestly secured a lot of games for me. It's overlooked, underlooked, same difference. But if you really want to spice up the game a little bit, change up the playstyle, you can go Colturian, and Haymaker can and will save your ass if used properly. Now for Horde, it's kind of the same way. Orc is honestly it's still good. Obviously it's not as good because everybody has CC reduction with their trinkets and their crafted gear, but it's still good. And you'll also get Blood Fury, which is just a whack version, a Walmart on use trinket. Troll is also not bad either. Regular Troll, you get your Blood Crazed or whatever, Berserker Rage, whatever it's called. 10% extra haste works well with your Ascendance because it's a 3-minute cooldown. I think it's a 3-minute cooldown now, or is it 2 minutes? Either way, it's still good. It's still extra haste. It's amazing. And trolls do have natural slow reduction, duration on slows, so very good. But the other race I want to talk about, is Goblin. I used to be a Goblin towards the end of Shadowlands, and for a lot of reasons. One was a little bit of extra haste. You got like 1% extra haste if you were a Goblin, but the main reason why I was Goblin was because you get two ratios. You get one which is like rocket belt or like rocket launch, whatever it's called. It basically launches like a rocket at your target, deals a little bit of damage, whatever. But the main ratio is your rocket jump. Rocket jump is such an amazing ratio for enhancement shaman specifically because it ties in with your mobility. Your mobility is one of your greatest weaknesses as enhancement shaman, as you don't really have that much. So rocket jump was kind of like basically Gust of Wind in Shadowlands, when obviously Gust of Wind was just, not in the game. Now it's in the game, you still don't take it, but Rocket Jump was just honestly super amazing to have that little extra oomph in mobility. Rocket Jump itself has saved me so many games, especially in Arena, where I'm just trying to keep up the pressure on this healer or this DPS, and I just can't reach them. But that Rocket Jump behind a pillar, boom, LA Blast comes out that guy's face, and I win the game. It has saved me so many times in Battlegrounds, and just helped me secure a lot of kills in just normal PvP, Arena, Battlegrounds, World PvP. It's an amazing ability, and again, same thing, if you want to spice up the gameplay from just normal meta races, hey, Golteran for Alliance and Goblin for Horde are honestly really good choices. So your stat prio is pretty simple. It looks something like this: agility, versatility, haste, mastery, and crit. Agility and versatility, don't need to explain too much there. Agility is your primary, and versatility, you're a PvPer, so you need that extra healing and you need that extra damage. But why haste? Why haste over everything else? Well, haste smooths out your rotation, because as you know, you're a cooldown based rotation. Cooldown, 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 cooldown. Everything you have is a cooldown button. Now, haste smooths out the rotation, so you're not experiencing so much downtime. So why mastery? Why is mastery coming after haste? Well, mastery is coming after because it's not as important, but it's still better than crit. Crit is like there's very few classes in WoW that really focus on crit. Mastery increases your chance to actually get Stormbringer and Windfury procs, and of course, the more Stormbringer procs and Windfury procs you get, the more chances you have of getting more Maelstrom weapon to get some big damage and good healing on your spenders. And mastery also increases the amount of damage your fire, frost, and nature spells do. So of course that includes stuff like lightning bolt and elemental blast. Big juicer damage. And then yeah, crit, I just explained, it's like your least important stat. Now on to the real interesting stuff. It is the builds, the main aspect of WoW PvP. The builds, the talents, the question I get asked pretty frequently, in fact a lot actually. It is the builds. What build is the best? What build should I run? Is this build still worth it after the nerfs? Yada yada. Let's kind of take a look at what we got here. So I'm showcasing 3 builds right now, and I'll explain each and every one, which one excels and which one has its own weaknesses. Now I'll explain the Shaman tree first. The Shaman tree is pretty simple. I'll only explain like a lot of like the key factors. So of course you guys all know, you guys all know Maelstrom weapon, Astral Shift, Lava Burst, yada yada. But what's the main key? What is the main core of the Shaman tree? Well, it's pretty simple. This is all like my BG talents. So like this Shaman tree is more centered around battlegrounds, but there are some stuff you're gonna have to switch up because it's for arena and RBGs you gotta be a little bit serious and take some certain talents. Now, what is the main focus here? So let's start with Astral Shift. Astral Shift is obviously your main defensive cooldown. What is making Astral Shift work here? Well, we're taking either 2 of 1. It is Plains Traveler or Astral Bulwark. Plains Traveler helps bring Astral Shift back down to that Shadowlands level, where it reduces the cooldown by 30 seconds to bring it down to 1.5 minutes and increase its duration by 4 seconds. So 1.5 minute cooldown, 12-second wall, 40% wall. Cool. But you also have Astral Bulwark. Astral Shift reduces damage taken by an additional 15% to equal 55%. So you can look at this 2 ways. You can run both of them. They're both really good, but you can look at this at 2 ways. You can either look at it as, hey, do I want my wall up more frequently? That's my weak aura for my Earth Shield. Do you want wall up more frequently, or do you want wall to be enough to live? Look at it both ways. I kind of want the chance to live than to really have a little bit more uptime. So I choose the 15% increased damage reduction as well. So you kind of look to the left here. You see we're taking Earth Elemental, Earth Shield, Elemental Orbit, yada yada. Why is this? Well, because obviously Earth Elemental, Enhancement Shaman doesn't really strive in the whole defensive department. Your heals are interesting and your defense is really only Astral Shift. So anything to kind of help you with that is honestly very welcomed. Earth Elemental is one of them. Just an flat increase in HP, 15% while your Earth Elemental is out. Cannot go wrong with that. Combined with your Battle Master's Trinket, you're going to have a good bit of HP, and it's going to help you live a little bit longer. Earth Shield is just by default one of like the greatest things that has ever come to Enhancement Shaman. Increased healing by 20%, and just it also heals you as well whenever you take damage. So the actual healing aspect of Earth Shield is like, okay, whatever. But the actual healing bonus from Earth Shield is what really makes this ability great. Now I'm also taking Elemental Orbit, because Elemental Orbit allows me to take not only Earth Shield and Lightning Shield, it also allows me to have Earth Shield up on one extra target. So let's say you're doing 2v2s or 3v3s, you can have Earth Shield up on your mate, or you know what, if your mate's pissing you off, you can just have it on somebody else in those random battlegrounds, and hopefully they say thank you. Okay, Earth Shield is pretty precious, so you know it's nice having both Earth Shield and Lightning Shield up at the same time. Totemic Surge, I'm only taking this for BGs to reduce cooldown on totems. Honestly, you don't notice it, but it is there, and it's pretty nice. Healing Stream Totem and Swirling Currents, obviously for a little bit of extra healing on my healing surges. Now this is the main star here. It's Capacitor Totem. Capacitor Totem is one of the worst stuns. No, it's the worst stun in the game by a mile. You can place it anywhere you want, but it's just so easy to kill. You can easily walk out of it. Why am I taking this over something like Lightning Lasso? Well, because the new addition of Guardian's Cudgel, which was a Torghast power, makes the stun so much better. The way you set up stuns as a Enhancement Shaman, because that's your only CC, is, you know, Cap Totem and Hex. So the way you set up your CC is you place down a Cap Totem and you Sundering into that, so they can't kill it and they can't move. So when they get stunned, they're just stuck there, and then in that 3-second window, just do whatever you can to get as much pressure as you can, because they're going to break free. It's a 3-second cooldown, it's pretty weak. But with the addition of Guardian's Cudgel, it allows you to play a little bit, that's not my talents, it allows you to play a little bit more, you know, get a little bit more damage and value out of it. When Capacitor Totem fades or is destroyed, another Cap Totem is dropped automatically in the same place. So if they destroy it, cool, it's going to place another Cap Totem, but if they don't destroy it, you're going to get 2 stuns. And usually a lot of people don't know how this works. So they'll trinket the first Cap Totem, and then they trinket, and then guess what? Another Cap Totem gets placed, and they get stunned again. It's pretty great. So you Cap Totem, you Sun Ring so they can't kill it and can't walk out of it. They're stunned. If they're stupid, they'll trinket, and then boom, another Cap Totem is there. They'll get stunned again. Or if they kill Cap Totem the first time, another one will be placed down and will stun them. It will definitely get them that time. So it is a really great stun now that you have Guardian's Cudgel. It still has its same faults, but it's a lot better now than it was before. The new addition to Earth Grab Totem is honestly so good, defensive and offensive wise, to kind of make connections with Earth Grab Totem. You place it down at a caster or a melee trying to kite back to his healers or his team. You Earth Grab Totem, and you can really just disrupt and cause a lot of havoc with this. Defensively is probably my favorite use of this. Having Earth Grab Totem and just keeping melee at a distance and really appealing for my healers in battlegrounds and arena skirmishes, it's honestly just super great and helpful. Now, Surging Shields is another one I kind of want to mention. Increased damage dealt by Lightning Shield by 100%, and has additional 50% chance to trigger Maelstrom weapon when triggered. This is honestly really great, and this is really amazing for the simple fact of Lightning Shield is actually good now. Lightning Shield is just like been a complete dog booty for a while now. So having Surging Shields and having pretty much 100% chance to generate Maelstrom weapon, a stack of Maelstrom weapon, and honestly is usually actually up there in your damage, like usually like your 4th in damage, especially if there's just so much melee attacking you. Having that extra helping hand with Maelstrom generation is just really good. Now my last point is I'm going to talk about Spirit Walk versus Gust of Wind. Gust of Wind coming back. Every Shaman is like, oh, well, what are you going to take now? Spirit Walk or Gust of Wind? It's always going to be Spirit Walk, unfortunately. As fun as it was seeing Gust of Wind return, it's just not that great. For Elemental, it's better. And usually take Gust of Wind, but for Enhancement, not being able to get out of roots to not only just kite back, but to also, you know, just keep pressure and momentum going, it's really rough just not having that root cleanse. It's still like not as good because it's still 1 minute cooldown. You can pretty much get slowed right after it, right after you use Spirit Walk, but just that one get out of jail free card is really good. Focus Insight is not bad at all. It basically just reduces the mana cost and increases the healing effectiveness of your next healing surge by, or your next healing ability by 20%, 30%. So it's not bad. But yeah, this is kind of like my main standard build. I'm taking Thunderous Paws for Battleground specifically. I'm never going to take this in Arena. It's really weak. But other than that, this is like my main build for Battlegrounds. But for Arena, I will switch it up a little bit, and we'll get to that later on in the video. But let's actually go to the right here and see what this build is. This is the TunaStorm build, or the Stormstrike build, one of 3 that was showcased. Now, what's the main aspects of this build? Well, it's pretty simple. You, of course, are taking your Stormstrike modifiers, every single one. You're taking stuff like Doom Winds. Doom Winds, obviously, is really good. 200% chance to proc Wind Fury, and Wind Fury weapon deals 10% increased damage for 8 seconds. Pretty damn good. You're taking stuff like Storm's Wrath, which is a lock-in for no matter what talent build you are. It's just increased chance to proc Stormbringer and Wind Fury. Definitely a super great ability. You have Overflowing Maelstrom, even though it did get nerfed. Improved Maelstrom weapon and Raging Maelstrom did get nerfed. It is still good with this build for one specific reason. Now, you're also taking stuff like Ice Strike and Swirling Maelstrom because it does help with your rotation a little bit. Because obviously, when you're not lucky with procs, Ice Strike can kind of just come in and save the day and buy you just a little bit more time. You're taking Crashing Lightning and Converging Storms. Crash Lightning for the Converging Storms buff. Basically, however many targets your Crash Lightning hits, your Stormstrike will be buffed by 25% for each target hit, up to a maximum of 6 stacks. So if you hit 6 targets, well, you do the math, that's like 150% increased damage on your next Stormstrike. That's big, pretty big. Feral Spirits is also another shining star here. Feral Spirits now by itself gives you 15% increased physical damage. Again, you're not taking Elemental Spirits because this is not a magic focused build. This is all just Stormstrike physical damage build. So you're taking stuff like Elemental Assault and Legacy of the Frost Witch. Very good. Legacy of the Frost Witch is an amazing ability. Consuming 10 stacks of Maelstrom weapon will reset the cooldown of Stormstrike and increase the damage of your physical abilities by 25% for 5 seconds. So of course that works really well with Overflowing Maelstrom. You get 10 stacks of Maelstrom, dump it on an Elemental Blast, boom, you instantly get your Legacy of the Frost Witch, and the cooldown of your Stormstrike will be reset. Very nice. Elemental Assault. Stormstrike deals increased damage and has a 100% chance to generate 1 Maelstrom weapon. Amazing. A guaranteed way to generate Maelstrom weapon is always welcome. And then of course you're running Proc Ascendance with Static Accumulation. While Ascendance is active, you generate 2 Maelstrom weapon every 1 second. Pretty amazing. This works well. Considering 2 facts. A, you're generating a Maelstrom weapon, so it's gonna be easier to get your Legacy of the Frost Witch buff. But you're also generating Maelstrom weapon to help reset the cooldown of your Feral Spirits combined with Witch Doctor's Ancestry. Every time you gain Maelstrom weapon, you reduce the cooldown of your Feral Spirits by 2 seconds, and your chance to gain Maelstrom weapon is increased by 4%. So Ascendance with Static Accumulation just pairs so well with having Legacy of the Frost Witch and Witch Doctor's Ancestry. Now, what's the sauce here? What are we doing here? Like, what's the combat looking like? Well, the combat is looking pretty simple. It's looking pretty simple. So ideally, you want at least 3 targets. At least 3 targets. That's like the sweet spot you want. At least 3 targets for the main purpose of getting your Converging Storms buff to really grant you a good amount of benefits. So at least 3 targets is going to get you like 75% increased damage on your next Stormstrike. Now, you want to get to somewhere around 10 Maelstrom stacks. You can either go for like 6, 7, 8, whatever. At least, I'd say 7 is like a comfortable amount. But what do you do after that? What do you do after that when you're really engaging in combat right here? Well, it's pretty simple. You are going to Crash Lightning. You're going to pop your Feral Spirits, get that Maelstrom weapon going. You're going to Doom Winds. You're going to get to 10 Maelstrom stacks. You're going to Elemental Blast. And then you're just going to Stormstrike and Stormstrike and Stormstrike constantly. That is all you're doing, is just feeding Stormstrike with as much damage as possible with Legacy of the Frost Witch and Crash Lightning. That is all this build is centered around. Crash Lightning for Converging Storms. Hopefully there's at least 3 targets. If there's like 2 or 1, this build really falls short. But if there's multiple targets where you can just cleave, whether it's pets or just multiple targets just gathered in one place, it is just going to feed your Stormstrike and just do massive damage. But basically all you're really doing is weaving in your elemental blasts and of course your lightning bolts and your healing surges, whichever one is demanded more in your situation. And all you're doing is just trying to get as much uptime on your Legacy of the Frostwitch buff as possible. That's what you want. And whenever Crash Lightning comes off cooldown, then that's when you can get your Converging Storms buff. Hopefully your Legacy of the Frostwitch lines up with that. And of course your Feral Spirits are always going to be out 90% of the time. So when the stars align, Stormstrike is going to do massive damage. With this build, I've been hitting like 60k normal Stormstrikes, and it's been pretty juicy. And for crits, it's been like 70k plus, 75k plus. It is honestly amazing. And of course, during that window of doom wins, if you get a Ascendance proc, it's just going to be even more damage because Windstrike does a lot of damage. Now, what are some of the positives and negatives of running this build? Well, it's pretty standard. One positive is that your damage is honestly very high with Stormstrike. Just constantly having Stormstrike doing good damage and just honestly pumping people is really great rotation wise. However, your main negative here is that it's easy to lose momentum. It's easy to lose momentum, and it's also really hard to line up. This build requires a bit more setup, as you have a couple things to manage. You have your Feral Spirits to manage, you have your Legacy of the Frostwitch to manage, and you have your Converging Storms buff to manage. You can easily lose momentum, and you can easily just throw everything off track, where you're getting Converging Storms buff and you don't have a Legacy of the Frostwitch enabled, or your Feral Spirits is just on cooldown when you have both Legacy of the Frostwitch and Converging Storms. It can get kind of out of hand sometimes. It's 3 buffs to manage constantly, so that's why this build is a lot harder to set up, and requires a bit more a bit more help than the other builds I'm going to showcase. So another issue with this build is that this is more like a game design thing, but Crash Lightning itself is pretty awkward. Crash Lightning, it says, electrocutes all enemies in front of you, dealing X amount of damage and hitting 2 or more targets, enhances your weapons, yada yada. But the reason why this ability is awkward is because it's just a game design thing, where there are certain abilities in WoW where the range of it is just really non-existent. If you hit a target, if there's targets literally 2 pixels away from your primary target, your Crash Lightning-ing, it's not going to hit those targets, and you're only going to get like 1 stack of Converging Storms. That's bad. That is not good at all. I really wish it worked a little bit differently, like, hey, maybe in like a 15-yard radius, strike all targets around you, and you know what, maybe it could work like that, I don't know. Same thing with Sunring. Sunring also is really awkward. If somebody is like a couple pixels away from the actual animation, it will not hit them, and Sunring triggers Wind Fury as well, so if it's not hitting them, you're losing a lot of value from Sunring, not just from the end cap, but from the damage. So this build, not only game design is pretty wonky, but it's just a little bit awkward. One of the other faltering points of this build is Legacy of the Frostwitch. Legacy of the Frostwitch, 5 seconds is not that much, especially when you're not getting procs. If you just use your Stormstrike when it gets reset with Legacy, and you're just not getting procs, it's just like, okay, well, I just got this buff for just 1 Stormstrike value. Like, it's not that, like, that's kind of not like fair, you know what I'm saying? Especially considering the fact that you don't have any other physical spells other than like Sundering, which does a lot of damage, but like that's not like your main core of your build, of any of your builds. So if they change this to maybe increase the duration of it, or maybe just made it increase Stormstrike damage by 25%, your next 2 Stormstrike, I don't know. But honestly, the duration is what's really killing this ability. Even though it's really great, the duration, 5 seconds, is just not that strong. Now this next build should be a pretty familiar build. It's my Lava Lash build. You've seen this build plenty of times in my videos, whether it be in pre-patch or whether it be beginning of Dragonflight. You've seen this build pretty much in all my videos. Now there are some talents I switched up, but your main key focuses of these talents are, of course, your Lava Lash. Your Lava Lash for not only really good damage, but for rotational fluency. Combining Hot Hand and Ashen Catalyst, Hot Hand being you have a 5% chance to reduce the cooldown of Lava Lash by 75% and increase its damage done by 40% for 8 seconds, is really strong. Combine that with Catalyst, And your Lava Lash is not only doing ramping up 12% increased damage, you're also reducing the cooldown of your Lava Lash by 0.5 seconds for each Flame Shock tick. Very, very strong combining these two abilities together. Now, what are the other strong points? Another one is your Ice Strike and Hailstorm. Now, why is this strong? Well, it's strong because you have Ice Strike buffing your Frost Shock by 100%. Oops, sorry. You also have Hailstorm buffing your Frost Shock by 15% for each stack up Maelstrom weapon consumed. So when you're running something like Overflowing Maelstrom that consumes 10 Maelstrom weapon stacks, and you know, on like an Elemental Blast or a Lightning Bolt, whatever, you're getting 10 stacks of Hailstorm. And that 10 stacks is going to equal like what, 150% increased damage on your next Frost Shock. So that's 250% increased damage with Ice Strike and Hailstorm. Honestly, the math is probably wrong. You do it yourself, but basically it's a lot of damage with Frost Shock. And I'll kind of talk about why that's so important in a little bit. Your key components are also Primordial Wave. Primordial Wave, just being Primordial Wave, increasing the amount of damage your Lightning Bolt does by 150% and striking every single target afflicted by your Flame Shock. And if you didn't know, which you should know, it strikes your primary target twice. Your current target that you are using your Lightning Bolt on with your Primordial Wave buff will be struck twice. Pretty great. You're also taking Primal Maelstrom, granting you 10 stacks of Maelstrom weapon when you use Primordial Wave. And of course, you're taking Elemental Spirits for that increased spell damage. Fire, Frost, or Lightning. If you get Fire, that's more damage to your Lava Lash. If you get Frost, more damage to your Frost Shock. And if you get Lightning, more damage to your Lightning. Again, it's just a super win-win no matter what you do. So what's the rotation? What's the setup for this build? Well, it's pretty simple. I'm honestly going to say something and it's going to either help you or just make you confused much more. I always get questions about, hey, what's the rotation for Enhancement Shaman? What am I pressing? You know, when this is off cooldown, when this is on cooldown. Honestly, I'm going to tell you straight, you're literally pressing anything that glows. Anything that glows, you're going to press it. There's no dedicated answer to this question because it's not like a rare, it's not like a rare question, it's a common question. You know, you're not like a Red Paladin where, okay, you're Crusader striking into, you know, into a Blade of Justice, you know, you're incinerating into Chaos Bolt. It's like, yeah, that's what you're doing, but remember, your entire rotation and your entire momentum of the class is based off of procs, Stormbringer procs, Windfear procs, you know, to generate Maelstrom weapon. Like, all of that is reliant on RNG. So don't be like ashamed when you say that, oh, like, I don't know what to do when Stormstrike is off cooldown or is on cooldown, because you're not alone. It's every Enhancement Shaman. So you're pressing anything that glows, especially with this build. If you see Lava Lash glowing, you're going to press it. If you see Stormstrike glowing, you're going to press it. And when you see Elemental Blast or Lightning Bolt glowing and you're at 10 Maelstrom stacks, you're going to want to press it. So what's the main setup burst for this build? Well, how am I going to set this burst up? Well, it's pretty simple. You're gonna get Ice Strike out. This is like once you're engaging on a target and you lock eyes on someone, you want to kill them. This is what you're gonna do. You're gonna pop your fill of spirits. No matter what elemental spirits you get, it's probably gonna benefit you. You're gonna get your elemental spirits out there. You're going to Ice Strike. You're gonna Primordial Wave, and then after that, you're gonna Lightning Bolt, and you're gonna go into a Frost Shock, and that's literally it. That's literally your go with this build. And of course, that works by, again, you generate 10 Maelstrom stacks with Primordial Wave, and you get that pre-Ice Strike, so you don't have to cast it after you use Primordial Wave. But you get that Primordial Wave going, you get those 10 Maelstrom stacks going, you get a Lightning Bolt out there for big damage, and then of course you have 10 stacks of Hailstorm, and then that's when you use your Frost Shock for a big kind of like little cherry on top. That's the go for this build. You don't really have like a window like Wings or, again, Ascendance, where it's like, okay, this next 12, 15, 20 seconds, I have big damage. No, this build focuses on that rotational fluency. Short cooldown Lava Lashes, all right? A Hailstorm combined with Swirling Maelstrom for a little bit of extra Maelstrom generation. Your Primordial Wave generating 10 Maelstrom stacks. This all reflects rotational fluency. It's really great. Now, of course, one of the greater things about this build is it's easy damage. It's easy damage to set up. It's easy damage to get going. There's not that much room for failure of this build. Now, the only problem with this build is that your damage kind of fluctuates. You don't, again, like I said, you don't have like a window of huge damage. Your damage is your rotation, kind of like later seasons of like Shadowlands, basically. Your damage or your burst is your rotation, so your damage fluctuates. It's a really fluctuating damage. You have potential to do a lot of damage with, you know, Primordial Wave Lightning Bolt into a big Frost Shock if you get good crits, but if you're not getting good crits, especially if you're not getting good wolves, like for example with that window, you want your lightning and your frost wolves to get just the maximum damage you can get from your lightning bolt, your Primordial Wave Lightning Bolt, and your Frost Shock. If you're not getting good RNG with that, and of course if you're not critting, your damage is going to look a little bit kind of like spiky. It's going to look a little bit, again, fluctuating. It's not going to be the same every single time. You have potential to do big damage, but you also have potential to do pretty minimal damage. That's where this build kind of just falls apart. But on the other bright side, you don't have that much downtime. So if you're looking for a build where you want a bit of uptime, you're just struggling to keep that rotation going with Enhancement Shaman, this is probably the most noob friendly build I can give you. So definitely try it out. And yeah, let's move on to our next build. Now our last build is a full send on Ascendance. This is going to be your heavy burst build, and honestly, you could run this in Arena, but because you're not going to run this in BGs, it's not really a good BG build. So what is the main focus of this build? It's mainly just maximizing your Ascendance damage. Now this looks oddly similar to TunaStorm build, your Stormstrike build, which it is. It's just the fact that you're taking more Ascendance focused talents. Now, what is the main focus of this? Well, it's pretty standard. Again, Doom Winds, I mentioned previously. Crash Lightning into Converging Storms. You got Legacy of the Frost Witch, a 1-point element of assault. You have elemental weapons, Storm's Wrath, pretty standard stuff. You literally saw this like two builds ago, yada yada. But you're taking these Ascendance talents. You're taking Ascendance, on-demand Ascendance, not proc. You're taking Static Accumulation, but you're also taking Thorn's Invocation. This is going to work so well. Ascendance talents work so well with so many of your core abilities, it's crazy. Now, the reason why this build is pretty good in terms of burst is because when you're in Ascendance mode, you can just AFK. You're not really doing anything at this point. Your Static Accumulation itself is going to work so well with your Feral Spirits to get your Feral Spirits off cooldown even quicker, because you're just generating Maelstrom Weapon passively, and of course, when you're generating Maelstrom Weapon, you're getting reduced cooldown on your Feral Spirits by 2 seconds. That's really good. Now, your Thorn's Invocation works really well. When you get to 5 Maelstrom stacks, you automatically consume those stacks to dish out a Lightning Bolt. This works well with Legacy of the Frost Witch. You don't really have to, press Elemental Blast or Lightning Bolt in this window. No, your Ascendance will do all the work for you, and you'll constantly just have Legacy of the Frost Witch buffs all the time. It's pretty amazing. So what's the rotation with this build? It's the same thing as your TunaStorm build. You're just Stormstriking and you're Crash Lightning. Now the only thing that's unfortunate is that you don't have Ice Strike and Swirling Maelstrom for just a little extra helping hand with rotation. Now honestly, you could take elemental weapons out and you can just go for Swirling or for Ice Strike and Swirling Maelstrom, which I probably will do, because I mean 10% increased damage on Fire, Frost, Nature, it's not bad, but like, do you want a little bit of increased damage or do you want more help with rotation? Honestly, they're both good, but I probably would recommend going Ice Strike. So how am I setting up damage? What am I doing when I see somebody? I see the healer, I see their DPS, I want to kill that Arms Warrior which has been kicking my ass this entire BG. How am I going to go about killing him? Well, pretty standard. You're going to go in there, you're going to get your Crash Lightning buff up. You're going to hopefully there's at least 3 targets or more, so you can get a big, good Crash Lightning to get those good Converging Storms buffs. After that, it's just kind of like the same thing where it's easy setup. You just press Doom Winds, and then you ascend. And once you're in Ascendance, you're just AFK. You're just pressing Wind Lash, or you're pressing Windstrike. You're just getting that Maelstrom weapon to just consume, to generate, consume, generate, generate, over and over again to get constant Legacy of the Frost Witch buffs, and to constantly just reset the cooldown of your Feral Spirits. Now, of course, this build is just heavily focused around Ascendance, nothing really more. You don't really have that much magic damage, which is why I'm saying take like elemental weapons out and take like swirling Maelstrom and Ice Strike. There's not really that much magic damage. You're not really taking super high efficiency into like elemental blast. It still does good damage with even without elemental weapons. So honestly, just take this out. Why not? Why not? Why not? But the main purpose of this build is just a full send on burst. So that's a good and bad thing. This is the most burst heavy build out of all three that I've shown you. However, it's also the weakest rotational fluency, which is what really makes Enhancement Shaman, which is having a good rotation compared to other classes. So when that is kind of tampered with, you're kind of playing with like fire a bit, where it's like you really got to know what you're doing in order to make this build succeed. So this is kind of like a 2v2, just like, hey, just a full send into burst. If I kill something, great. If I don't kill something, crap, we'll just do it next game. So where this build really falls out is, again, like I said, rotation. All you really have is just Stormstrike, Crash Lightning, Ice Strike. It's just kind of like whatever. And since they're not taking, just having one less point in Elemental Assault, or even switching this up to have one less point in Witch Doctor's Ancestry and putting that back into Elemental Assault, no matter what, it's still just going to feel really awkward, one way or the other. But the great positive of this build is that, again, it's just great burst damage. It's the most heavy burst damage out of all three builds I've shown you. Out of TunaStorm, out of Lava Lash, it's the build that's going to secure your kills, but in that 3-second window or 3-minute window. Now, you can also run deeply rooted elements if you really want to, and just kind of make this like a little bit advanced TunaStorm build of just kind of having Ascendance procs, just, you know, again, generate Maelstrom weapon to get Legacies of Frost Witch and to get Feral Spirits off cooldown faster. It could be like basically like a step up with the TunaStorm build, except still the same problems of like, okay, you don't have that rotation. Rotation is still a bit wonky since you don't have all your talents down here, but that's just too much kind of configuration. And honestly, this build is just kind of like, should be the way it is. Now this is going to be your mostly focused towards arena build. BG's not that great for arena. It's gonna either end games quick or put you back in the back in Valdraken in 2 seconds. So because once that window is gone, once that 15-second window is gone with your Ascendance, then you're kind of just screwed. You don't really have that much amazing damage outside of that window. Now, I said I was going to touch up more on the Shaman tree, and I'll do just that. So what are you really taking out? What are you really putting in terms of real competitive play? So I'm going to switch my TunaStorm build because that's like my main default. That's my main default build. So what are you really taking here? So honestly, the only thing you can really switch up is I'm not taking Thunderous Paws, and not that for arena, for RBGs, that's not going to cut it. So what are you really going to take? You have two routes you can go. You can stick with the same route, maybe put this point into like Hex. Obviously you're going to need Hex in RBGs and arena. So you can kind of, your build can kind of look like this, you know. It can look pretty much like this. You can keep your Swirling Currents, you can keep your Healing Stream Totem, keep the extra healing. However, you can not run Healing Stream Totem if you really don't want to, because A, it's just under the global, and that global of placing down Healing Stream Totem to get that increased effectiveness on your Healing Surge can cuck you sometimes. So you can just take that out. You can take Totem Surge out with it as well. And you have 5 more talent points left. What are you going to put that in? You can put that in Improved Lightning Bolt, Thunderstorm, and either Lightning Lasso or Thunder Shock. Both are really good options. In the arena sense, they're both in their own right pretty good. So Thunderstorm, obviously, it's pretty standard of just knocking melee away or knocking just anybody off, disrupting casters. It's pretty great. Now, Lightning Lasso is kind of like a love-hate relationship. Lightning Lasso, the positive side, can secure kills if you really want to. You lasso behind a pillar, you're not getting interrupted. It's pretty damn great. You can use it to peel off melee from your healers, yada yada. But the only issue is that it doesn't really work too well with enhancement as it does elemental. Elemental, you constantly have damage rolling out. You're a caster, you're constantly getting lava bursts, you're constantly getting magma chamber stacks. It works better with Lightning Lasso as you have damage outside of that lasso to really help finish the kill. Whereas enhancement, the minute you switch off of a target or the minute you peel off of a target, all the momentum that you built up to your Frost Witch, to your Storms, to your Wolves is just slowly dwindling down until you get back on the target. So having Lightning Lasso just really just being there just to stun this guy for 5 seconds, doing damage that I would be doing if I was actually completing my rotation instead of using Lightning Lasso, it's like a love-hate relationship. It's kind of just like pick one of the other. Now, Thundershock is really good for, again, casters. It's really great to just disrupt casters. It's another way to disrupt them. You do pretty well into casters because you obviously have something like Sundering, short cooldown interrupt. You have Grounding Totem, really, really good. So taking Thundershock is kind of like another stop. Honestly, pretty damn nice. Now, let's say I'll just take Lightning Lasso for this point. Now you have 1 extra point. Where can you really put that in? Honestly, I would recommend you kind of go into something like Voodoo Mastery. Voodoo Mastery is something that's overlooked. Short cooldown Hex is pretty damn awesome. Having a bit of extra CC, especially on Enhancement Shaman, feels really nice. And to have that, our main CC being, you know, Hex, basically just Walmart Polymorph, be on a shorter cooldown, honestly, it's a lot better than you think. Now, if you don't really want Voodoo Mastery, there's really not much you can really go. You can't really go like Spirit Walkers. You can't go like Fire. If you really want to, go ahead. But you can, like, really, there's really no other exciting, super great talents that you can really pick. Totemic Focus, the radius on this is just not that great. The increased duration is the only good part about this talent. However, the radius is what really should be the focus of this talent. But since the radius, you only get like 1 extra yard, even by speccing 2 points into this, not that great, not that amazing. Poison Cleansing, it's never going to be like in a super desirable. Stone Sea and Totem is really good, but it's more better for like something like Resto, who can just constantly have this out without really needing too much to manage it. You also have, like, you know, your Totemic Recall, your Creation Core. Like, is this stuff worth putting into? Not really. If you really want to like meme around and kind of reset the cooldown of your Static Field Totem or your Grounding Totem or your Tremor Totem, you can. Is it really going to save you though? That's the question. Is resetting the cooldown of Tremor Totem really going to save you in the end, or is it just going to like help you out just a tiny bit? Probably. You know what? You answer. This is this is your time to shine, ladies and gentlemen. Or sorry, gentlemen and ladies. Always gotta nail that. So there's really no other talent points to pick. Honestly, you can pick something like Spirit Wolf. I like Thunderous Paws. If Thunderous Paws was on like a 30-second cooldown, remove snares and increases your movement speed by 25% for 3 seconds. Only occurs every 60 seconds. If this was like a 30-second cooldown, I would love this more. But Spirit Wolf, honestly, when you're running down people and you're trying to, you know, chase people, or you're trying to kite a little bit, having that increased movement speed and that extra damage reduction can be really nice. And then, of course, if you really want Voodoo Mastery, you can take 1 point out of Focus Insight, because you don't really need 2 points in it. 1 point is just good enough. You can just take Voodoo Mastery, or Enfremblement, not that great. But yeah, Voodoo Mastery is just, honestly, it's super overlooked. But yeah, that's kind of like the build you're kind of looking at in case you want to go a different route. But normally I'm going to stick with the Healing Surge, because I just want the extra healing from Healing Surge. I just like it. I like it. I like having the extra healing. Pretty nice. Now your PvP talents are pretty standard. These are the PvP talents I always run. For Battlegrounds, for Arena, I always just love these talents because there's not really that many good options. Of course, for Arena, this is what I'm kind of going to be looking like here. Swelling Waves, Grounding Totem, Static Field. Swelling Waves is just locked in. You're never going to spec out of this. But what else do you got here? So, of course, Grounding Totem, if you're facing any casters, if you're facing anybody, honestly, that isn't a physical dealer, so it's just really great. You can Grounding anything in the world so long as it's magic. You can Grounding Frostbolts, you can Grounding Chaos Bolts, you can ground Hodges from Paladins, you can ground Traps, you can ground Imprisonment, or I don't know about Imprisonment, but you can ground Fell Eruption, you can ground Convoke. It's just so good. Grounding Totem is probably one of the best honor talents in the game. Like, it's just an easy, quick save for just not only you, but for your team. It's really great, especially when people don't notice it and they just whip their entire burst into Grounding Totem. It feels so good. It feels so nice to see that happen. Season Winds, it's okay. Decrease your damage taken from a certain spell school by 15% for 12 seconds. So if you interrupt chaos from a what's it called, from like a warlock, then you'll take 15% reduced chaos damage. Okay, not really super amazing there. It gets kind of awkward when you're like, okay, well, if you interrupt the healer on like their holy spell, then I take reduced holy damage. But like, I'm facing like Aflock, Arcane Mage, I don't bloody know, make some stuff up. It can get kind of awkward sometimes. Recovery, it's not bad. Spectral recovery with something like Spirit Wolf and Refreshing Waters Ancestral Wolf Affinity can be interesting. If you're facing like Rogue Mage or like any comp where you can just really die in the opener like that, so like an NM Hunter Burst or a Feral Druid, something that's just in stealth and just waiting to kind of get certain buffs to just whip on you. Sitting in Ghost Whip for that extra defensive, and sitting in Ghost Whip for little bit extra healing, and then of course sitting in Ghost Whip for to be able to use Wind Shear and Purge while in Ghost Whip is pretty interesting. And honestly, it's a lot better than you think. But is it worth it though? That's the main question. Most likely, I just haven't seen super high amount of value in that. Unleash Shield. Constantly having to reapply your shields, whether it be Lightning Shield or Earth Shield, is already just bad enough. But when you're deliberately doing it to yourself, it's not that great. Counterstrike Totem used to be good, but it's just for BGs, it's funny to use, especially if no one kills it. But in actual PvP, it's not something that is going to be super valuable. The damage of it is, if a Rep Paladin hits you for like 125k, Just a God's Vengeance, it's not going to do 125k straight to the guy's face. Like, no, it's going to do damage over time. Kind of whack. Skyfire Totem, you don't have many abilities that crit, and you're not running high crit anyway, so Skyfire Totem is kind of just whatever. Ethereal Form is just a joke of a defensive. If you really want to meme with it, you can run Plains Traveler, Plains Traveler with Ethereal Form to get literally like a 30-second Ethereal Form. Wow, 1 minute cooldown. This used to be 15 minutes or 45 minutes or 45 seconds. Sorry, interesting. You can meme around with it and just have like a 30-second immunity to all physical damage, but this also means you won't be able to do damage, and if you can't do damage, then you're not generating Maelstrom Weapon, and if you're not generating Maelstrom Weapon, you're not going to heal, and you're not going to do damage. So, yeah, pretty sucky ability there. Thunder Charge is not bad for comps. I mean, your only comp is Ret War, let's be honest, and Ret Pally. Now, Thunder Charge is not bad, especially with Enhancement Shaman, where, it just helps you get a little bit more Stormstrikes out there, but it's just not like, it's not super desirable to just get a little bit faster Stormstrikes out there. And if it worked a bit differently, I would consider taking it. However, it doesn't work like how I think it should work. Thunder Charge basically reduces your cooldowns and increases the recovery rate of all your abilities by 30%. So they're going to cool down a little bit faster. But when that 10 seconds ends, it goes back to what its original cooldown rotation is. So if it just kept the cooldown the way it was when your Thunder Charge was active, then I would like this ability a lot more. But it doesn't. And then Shamanism, it's not bad, especially with Ascendance and Doomwind's build. It's not bad, but 10% haste. Again, it's the same thing. Like, if you're just not getting procs, then like you just kind of have like this 10% haste for no reason. So yeah, pretty whack. But it still is good, and it still has a lot of high value. Only problem is that it also does cost mana. So it's just another thing that just chunks your mana. So not super happy about that. And then Ride the Lightning. I love Ride the Lightning in Battlegrounds and Arena. It is just so good, just having just a little bit of constant cleave, and it does help you generate Maelstrom a little bit more. However, this does break CC, so if you have like a fear on the healer, or you have like a trap on a certain DPS, if you Ride the Lightning, it's gonna break that. It's gonna break that trap and break that fear. So unfortunate, but hey, anything to do more damage. we're getting down to the final wire, and it's what are the strengths and weaknesses of Enhancement Shaman in general. Well, your main strength comes from your rotational fluency. Your rotation, if the procs can line up perfectly, your rotation is honestly what really makes you better than, you know, a lot of other classes in terms of damage and how your damage rolls out. A lot of classes are just pretty standard. Hey, press Crusader Strike, press Incinerate, press, you know, Shadow Bolt, press, you know, Chaos Strike. You know, it's just standard kind of rotations like that. And outside of that, outside of those big cooldowns like Metamorphosis, Avenging Wrath, you know, A-Bomb Limb, and Pillar of Frost, whatever cooldown you want to name off, outside of that damage, you're not really doing a whole lot. Your rotation is just kind of like, okay, I'm just stalling time and waiting to get my big cooldowns up. Whereas Enhancement Shaman, if you can get the procs to line up and you get good RNG, your rotation just becomes so fluent. You're just constantly dishing out really high damage compared to just normal Crusader Strike, Blade of Justice into like weak ass potato, you know, final verdicts for, you know, no damage at all without wings. So that's where Enhancement Shaman kind of shines above others. But other than that, you don't really have a lot of great qualities that you can really see as opposed to other melee. One of the main weaknesses of Enhancement Shaman is mana. You're one of the only classes or only specs in the game that actually has to worry about mana. It's kind of fun, but it's also kind of infuriating when you're the only one who has to worry about a specific problem. When that mana starts to get pressured, whether it's a melee on you or a caster on you, and you're just constantly just getting hit with just damage where you're just constantly having to heal a whole bunch, it just feels so bad. Because when you're blowing that mana on healing, again, you're also blowing that Maelstrom weapon, and that Maelstrom weapon, you want to use that on damage because you want to kill somebody, at least in game, not in real life. In game, you want to kill somebody. So when that healing gets pressured and that mana starts to dip lower and lower, that's when the aggression starts to target you. You're going to be the main target, and now that you have no mana, you can't even cast like stuff like Stormstrike or Crash Lightning, your actual DPS rotational abilities, when you're constantly healing. So now your healer has to worry about, you know, double the healing on your ass because you can't take care of yourself basically. You know, you're not a warrior who can just constantly just heal with bloodthirst and, you know, gushing wounds and, you know, frenzied region that's up in like 0.5 seconds. You're not a DH who has, you know, an infinity leech. You're not a Druid who's constantly just getting, you know, clear casting procs with their regrowths and constantly having renewal and, you know, frenzied region. You're not a bloody Rep Paladin who can just bubble and bop and, you know, SOV, which Rep Paladin is kind of like the same boat in a sense of like defensiveness really weak, so I'll kind of leave them to the side. But, you know, there's just so many other melee who can you know, really perform the healing task and survivability task so much better than Enhancement Shaman. And this ties into your next point, your next weakness, which is defensiveness. All you have is Astral Shift, and here's the thing, Astral Shift is not bad. The reason why it's bad is because it's only defensive. Having to take either reduced cooldown with increased duration or just a bigger wall is kind of like, it's pretty not rad, basically, you know what I'm saying? It's not super ideal. And that being your only defensive is really just shocking because outside of that wall, even in that wall, you're screwed, especially when you get stunned. Now, of course, every class is vulnerable in stuns. Like, it's not like an Enhancement Shaman thing, but what is an Enhancement Shaman thing is when you're out of that stun, you have nothing to respond to this guy. Nothing to respond to, you know, this rogue who is stun locking you, this BM, this hunter who's just constantly CCing you, this demon hunter who's on you. You have nothing to respond unless you have elemental spirits out or your feral spirits out before you get stunned. And of course, if you pre-wall, but if you have your elemental spirits out when before you get stunned, at least you have that extra bit of Maelstrom generation to keep you going. But if you don't have your feral spirits out, and especially if, you know, your lightning shield is not really doing you justice, if you're facing a caster or something who's just railing into you and you finally come out of that stun, again, you have no Maelstrom, and you're just gonna have to attack until you can finally get that Maelstrom. And that's one of the worst times where RNG can cuck you. If you're attacking and you're trying to generate Maelstrom out, you know, when you're out of that stun, and RNG is kicking you in the ball sack, and you're not getting a Stormbringer proc, you're not getting hot hand procs, you're not getting, you know, procs through your Crash Lightning or your Ride the Lightning or your Wind Fury, it just feels you're screwed. You're like, there's no other way to put it. You are screwed because you can't save yourself right here. And then of course one of your other weaker points is that your mobility. Your mobility is pretty weak. All you have is Pack Spirit, or sorry, yeah, pretty sure it's called Pack Spirit, and all you have is Feral Lunge. Feral Lunge is not bad. I just wish it was changed. Like 30-second cooldown, 25-yard range, lunge. I mean, compared to a roll, 3 rolls, 2 charges, 2 dashes, and a backflip. LVY. Get that out of there. Compared to just all this other amazing mobility that a lot of these other classes have that they can use to be offensive or, you know, defensive, Enhance only has Feral Lunge and Pack Spirit. Is it called Pack Spirit, by the way? Spirit Walk, sorry. Spirit Walk. It's just kind of, you know, it's really not there because you just Pack Spirit to get out of a root and you're just going to get slowed again or rooted again. You know, like, sure, it's still a great ability, but it's just like so weak compared to like everything else. And even on a standalone, it's like there's just so much like counterplay to it that. And of course you have anti-mobility like Static Field Totem, and you have Earth Grab Totem, which can help and save your ass to, you know, finally make some connections, to finally do some damage. But, you know, those 2 totems are just so amazing. So stop it. Those 2 totems are so amazing for not only offensive play but for defensive play. Getting, you know, Static Field Totems and Earth Grab Totems to, you know, help peel your healers, like that's like such an amazing benefit. But the tough decision remains: do you want to be offensive or do you want to be defensive? Unfortunately, a lot of classes don't have to make that decision. It's the same thing with your healing. When you're getting those big Maelstrom spenders, do you want to use your Maelstrom on damage or do you want to use it on healing? Again, a lot of classes don't have to pick between healing and damage. It's just pretty simple and pretty easy. It's pretty easy to get back to. Whereas enhancement, again, there's like no safe spot for enhancement where you can really be like, okay, I'm safe, I can finally do some damage now. There's really no safe point for enhancement shaman. You know, your defensives are weak, your healing is easily countered and pressured, your mobility is your biggest downfall out of everything. It's just, I literally don't know. I gotta find a way to get rid of that. It's just enhancement shaman has a lot of weaknesses that's just been so present for the past like couple of years, that it's just like, and it's never been addressed, and it's a bit demoralizing to, you know, just constantly having to deal with it. But you got to make it work somehow, and we're not playing enhancement shamans because we're not playing enhancement shamans because we find it fun. We're playing it because we're addicted, and we are in abusive relationships. So that's every enhancement shaman right now. We're in abusive relationships. We can never leave enhancement shaman. No, even though it constantly hurts our soul. But yes, guys, that was the guide video. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that I'm not really used to doing guides. I'm not really used to being put in the position to tell people, hey, this is what the best thing is, or this is how you play this class. So I'm not a whole like scripted person. Everything that was said in this guide is kind of just off the top of my head. But nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys found a bit of information that you did not know and that helped you, and it's going to help you in your Dragonflight journey. Links in the description if you want to see more Big Tuna, and if you're feeling generous today, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel with notifications on, because I upload every single day at 3 p.m. Yeah, that was the video, and hopefully I see you guys in the next life. Peace. You make me feel real when you tell me so.